and we'll welcome those who are calling in and those who are joining as we start the Daf today. Reminder to everyone, those that are participating or those that are also perhaps calling in later or joining a bit later or listening to this as a recording. Andrea sent out today again a reminder of how one can access recordings through the show website. Okay, so we're going to start off today on the Gemara that completes today's cycle and will begin tomorrow. So if we start on the Yud Tet 19b, towards the bottom where the Mishnah starts, is where I'm going to begin. The Mishnah is going to start with a discussion, again, in terms of behaviors that are not appropriate for Erev Shabbat. And that being the case, we've seen this Mishnah cited previously. Okay? Matnitin, our Mishnah says, Ein solin basar batseil ubeitza ela kadesha yitzolami ba'od yom. Right? According to our Mishnah, one is not permitted to roast meat or onion or egg unless one is able to roast it and complete that roasting on Erev Shabbat before it gets dark. A second comment, Ein notnin pat letanur. One does not place bread into the oven, im chashecha, once it becomes dark, velo charara, and not a biscuit or a cake, al gabei gechalim, on top of the coals. Ele kadei sheyikremu paneha miba'od yom, unless it's possible for that cake or biscuit to form some sort of crust while it's still day. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer, clarifying, all right, the following. The Kadei sheyikrom hatachton shala, so long as it forms its crust on the bottom. Problem, as I suggested briefly yesterday, is that the oven is earthenware, and one takes the dough like a piece of pita, sticking it against the side of the oven, and the fire is at the bottom. So are we talking about the crust forming on the side against the oven, or are we talking about some sort of crust on the bottom of the dough, so to speak, facing towards the fire? Gemara is going to have to deal with that shortly. Okay? In terms of that clarification, as we said by Rabbi Eliezer. Now, a bit of an exception. If we've said that these other items cannot be done Erev Shabbat as it gets close to dark, we see another issue. Mishal shalin et ha-Pesach b'tanur im chashecha, that we lower the Paschal lamb offering into the oven as it gets dark. Uma'achizin et ha'or b'medurat beit hamokad. And also, says our Mishnah, we may light or kindle some logs using some sort of wood chips or slices, the fire for the bonfire inside the Beit HaMoked. The Beit HaMoked, remember, is that room that was partially part of the Beit HaMikdash and partially outside, where the Kohanim would go because of the bonfire to warm up after or in between their doing the avoda. Now we continue, ubigvulim. However, outside the temple precinct, right, in the suburbs, so to speak, right, kedei sheta'ochuz ha'or b'rabo. But it's prohibited, okay, again, to kindle anything unless, in that area, unless the majority of the medura, okay, is totally consumed before nightfall on Friday. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, b'pchamim kol shehu. But Rabbi Yehuda seems to differ in that statement and said when you're lighting it not with logs, but with coals or charcoal, okay, it's a different situation because these light a little bit easier, and therefore once some of them start, that's acceptable. Okay, now what then happens is we now start actually tomorrow's daf. The Gemara says, V'kama, okay, and how much? In other words, asking really the question here as how much of that meat did we say has to be roasted before the start of Shabbat, right? Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rav. Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rav, Kedei sheyitzolu miba'od yom kima'achal ben drusai. So long as enough of the meat is roasted, okay, before Shabbat, like the food of Ben Drusai. Ben Drusai being a well-known bandit or thief, always on the run, and therefore only cooked his food partially through. Clearly, the implication was, according to some Rishonim, halfway through, according to others, less than halfway through, but at least partially cooked. Itmar nami, and about this the following was said. Amar Rav Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rav Asi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol shahu kimachal ben drusai, any food that is cooked so enough in the, that it's like mostly or half or mostly cooked, ein bo mishum bishulei nachri. We don't consider then that under the category of bishul nachri, of food being cooked by a Gentile. Why? Because the implication is that the Jew started the cooking. Most of the cooking, okay, was successful. And even then, if the Jew or Gentile takes it off the fire and then later puts it back on the fire, okay, it's still considered primarily cooked by a Jew. Tanya, and now we have a Braita. Chananya Omer, says Chananya as follows, right? Kol shahu kimachal ben drusai, mutar lahashoto al gav kira. Any food that is mostly cooked, right? Using the example again, ben drusai food, it is permitted to leave it on the stove, right? In other words, on Shabbat, okay? So long as in this case, some, as I said, half or a third was cooked through, okay? the afal pi she'en grufa ukatuma. Despite the fact, okay, says the Braita, Hanania, that one did not sweep any of the cinders, or one did not sprinkle any of the ashes. In other words, the implication being that these were acts that would be done beforehand to keep the heat of the coals limited and prevent one also from further stirring of the coals. Our Mishnah now is cited again. Ein notnin et hapat chule. Said not to put the bread, okay, on Erev Shabbat. Ibayalahu. So what the scholars asked, Tachton he'ach degabe tanur. Do we say that when it's the bottom, as Rabbi Elazar hinted at, do we say the bottom, right, directed towards the oven? O Dilma Tachton he'ach degabe ha'or. Or do we say that when it refers to the bottom, the surface is adhering to form the crust towards the fire? In other words, clearly, right, we have a problem with the fact that even though the fire is way below, what part of the piece of cake or bread is going to get this crust? Tashma. Listens to Braita says, right? Rabbi Elazar Omer, Kadei Shiyikramu Pahaneha Hamedubakin Batanur. Rabbi Elazar clarifying that it's the side adhering to the oven that must form the crust. Back to our Mishnah. Mishal Shalin et HaPesach. We say that the exception of putting something in at nightfall, in this case, we're talking, of course, about Pesach and the Paschal lamb sacrifice. My Tama, why is this the case? Mishum b'nei chavura zrizin hein, because those people who have signed up to be part of the group to eat the Pesach offering together are clearly individuals who will be quick to observe the practices and therefore would not necessarily, okay, handle or think of handling the fire. Lav hachilo. This would seem to imply that if the group were not careful, quick to behave in that manner, they could not lower the Paschal lamb. Ba'amar mar. But then the masters say, Gadya, bein sharik, a lamb, right? And remember the Pesach offering had to be a goat or a lamb, whether the oven is sealed, bein lo sharik, or the oven is not sealed, shapir dami. Okay, it seems to be, okay, acceptable. Okay, why is that? Okay, hatam mintach. Why? Because in our earlier case, when we emphasized zerizin, okay, the lamb here was not sliced. Was sliced, right? Hacha lo mintach. But where otherwise the lamb is not sliced, as the whole Paschal lamb has to be cooked at one time. Okay, next piece from our Mishnah. Uma'achizin et ha'or. And we indicate that we can kindle a light with wood chips or other things, the fire, right? Particularly, we said, in the temple, the Beit Hamukad, on the eve of Shabbat. Minahani mili, how do we know this? What's the basis, right? After all, Amar Rav, says Rav, we have a pasuk that says, Lo tivaru eish bechol moshvotechem, that you cannot kindle a fire throughout your habitation, okay? Wherever you, of course, is your home. However, Gemara then darshans, B'chol moshvotechem iatam avir, throughout your home, okay? Your habitation you may not kindle. Aval atam avir b'medurat beit hamoked, but you are permitted then to kindle with wood chips, things like that, the bonfire inside the Beit HaMoked, right? Now, remember here one other item, and that is the point that in the temple, okay, they were required to observe Torah mandated laws, but not necessarily rabbinic mandated laws. Okay? Now, Matkifla Rav Chisda. However, Rav Chisda challenges this statement and says as follows: Ihachi, if that's the case, afilu b'Shabbat nami, then wouldn't that seem to imply that it would permit lighting it on Shabbat as well? That should be permitted. Ela amar Rav Chisda. But rather, Rav Chisda said, what permission we have here is namely something specific, namely that there were offerings brought on Friday, and while most of the offering may have been completed, there were pieces that may have been left over till Shabbat. Could you burn those extra pieces? For example, Kra, the pasuk comes, Ki ata lemishrei evarim updarim, that according to Rav Chisda, the pasuk comes not to permit the kindling in the Beis HaMoked, but rather only to continue to light, if necessary, the fire at the Mizbeach for the purpose of burning any limbs or any fat of animals sacrificed on Friday, okay, in that particular case. That your habitation implied secular reasons and not for the observance of burning for the Beis Hamikdash. Hu da'ata, right? And therefore, here Rav Chisda's argument being, why? Namely, v'hakohanim zrizin hein, because it's the Kohanim who are particularly specific, quick to act in terms of the consecrated items. Okay, let's go now back to another piece from our Mishnah. Ubigvulim kadesh ta'achos. We said that in the countryside, right, it was prohibited, okay, to start any kind of a bonfire, medurah, unless there was enough time on Friday for the large part of the bonfire to completely become consumed. Okay, my ruban. So the Gemara asks naturally, what do we mean by the majority of the bonfire? Amar Rav, says Rav, rov kol echad ve'echad. Rav is saying that it's the majority of each and every log or piece of wood. Shmuel Amar, says Shmuel, Kadei shelo yamru hava eitzim v'naniach tachtehen. And Shmuel's perspective was that so long as there was not an effort needed to continue to bring additional wood or chips or things like that and place them underneath the larger logs for the medurah, for the bonfire to proceed. And now the Gemara is going to tell us that there actually is a support to Shmuel. Tana Rabbi Chia, l'siyua l'Shmuel. And Rabbi Chia taught a braita, if you will, that came to Shmuel's support, namely regarding the temple menorah. We see that it says, Kedei shetahei shalhevet olah me'aleha, velo shat'ah shalhevet olah ayedei davar acher. Namely, that we're saying here that the flame, excuse me, increases, ascends on its own, and not with the help of anything else. Right? And so therefore, he uses that as an example to support Shmuel's view that it means not having to bring additional wood chips or kindling. Okay? Now, Gemara asks an interesting question. Side point. We would consider this midurah a number of logs or a number of branches together. What happens if we're talking about a single log or a single branch? Okay. What is that status? Eitz Yechidi. Rav Amar Rov Aviv. According to Rav, we're saying it has to be the majority of its thickness. Va'amre la barov hakefo. And others say it was the majority of its circumference. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa then, Hilkach ba'inen rov avav u'ba'inen rov hakefo. That we need both for a single log, okay, its entire thickness as well as its full circumference, okay, in order to be the acceptable. Now, this reminds the Gemara, similar to another machloket regards to Tanaim. Ketanai, as argued with other Tanaim, Rabbi Chia Amar, Kadei she'yishchat ha'etz mimelechet ha'omen. Why? Rabbi Chia says that what does it mean to be consumed? Totally, the majority of the log or branch was burned, so that it's ruined to the point that an artisan cannot use it to make or some sort of item. Rabbi Yehuda ben Batera Omer, Kedei she'ta'ochaz ha'esh mishnei tzdadim, that the log is burning from two sides. Va'af al pi she'en raya ledavar, and even though Rabbi Yehuda ben Batera has no clear source, particularly Torah source, to cite, nevertheless, zecher ledavar. There is, however, a text, a prophetic text that he's going to use from Yecheskel to cite this idea. Et shnei kitzotav achla ha'esh v'tocho nachar hayitzlach lemlacha. Namely, the fire has devoured both ends of it, and the midst of it is burned. Is it profitable for any work? Okay. Coming from Ezekiel chapter 15. Right? So that's what he uses to give his description of how much even a single log would need to be burning before Shabbat started to do any kind of leaving it to go into Shabbat. Now, another pasuk, however, is brought, okay, by Rav, okay, and he says as follows, okay, namely, pasuk from Jeremiah, okay, V'ha'ach lefanav miva'eret, he cites a pasuk, right? And there was a fire burning in the Ach, burning before him. And so the Gemara naturally asks, Mai Ach? What do we mean by Ach? Often translated as a hearth right? The fireplace. Amar Rav, he says Rav, Achvana. Says Rav, we're talking about a willow fire, okay? Namely, using willow twigs as kindling for the fire. Shmuel Amar, Eitzim shenidlaku ba'achvona. And Shmuel's argument is that it's wood that is kindled in what we might call friendship. In other words, that it means that one piece of wood is naturally going to lead to the next piece of wood and continue it to cause this burning. Okay? Well, but still also using willow branches as kindling. Hahu de amar laho man bai achvana. Okay, who was it then? Okay, a certain man who said, who wants to have achvana. How do we know? Ishtakach, it was forgotten what it was, and therefore the Gemara says, arvata, aravos. Okay, it was known to be willows. Continuing now, Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, in a new statement. Kinim, right, reeds, ein srichin rov. You don't need a majority of them to catch fire, right? Agdan, but if you bundle the reeds together, srichin rov, then you do need a majority of them to be burning Erev Shabbat for it to continue. Garinin and as far as burning, so to speak, seeds, yes, right? Tzrichin rov, they need a majority. Okay, not none but chotalot. If we put them, these seeds, into palm baskets, dried palm baskets, tzrichin rov, the majority of them then need to be burning. Matkifla Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda then challenges, Adrabah, just the opposite seems to be the case as Rav Chisda. Right? Ipcha mistabra, the opposite seems to be more reasonable. Right? Kinim mevadaran, the kinim, the reeds, separate. Right? Agadan lo mevadaran. If they're bound together, they're not separate. Right? And garinim mevadaran, seeds, they're separated. Not none b'chotlot lo mevadaran. If they're placed in baskets, right, then they are not separated. And that should be easier for them to itmar nami. And about this, it was said as we continue on Kaf Amud Beis 20b, okay? Amar Rav Kahana, says Rav Kahana, she'agdan tzrichin rov, that if you've bundled them, says Rav Kahana, the reeds that are tied together, okay, rov, they do need to have the majority of them burning Erev Shabbat in order to continue it into Shabbat. Lo agdan, if we don't bind them together, that's a different story. Ein srichin rov, we don't need the majority of them. Garinin, the seeds or the kernels. Srichin rov, we need, again, a number of them to be burning together, the majority. Not nan b'chotlot, if we place them in these baskets, ein srichin rov, we do not longer need any majority of the fire to, in that case. Okay, what about the following, says the Gemara. Tani Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is teaching the following still dealing with the topic of kindling or wood or items to create the medura. Tani Rav Yosef, Arba medorot ein tzrichin rov. There are 4 kinds of bonfires that don't require, the greater part, the majority of the collection, so to speak, to be burning before Shabbat starts. What are they? If the source of the bonfire, shel zephet, is from pitch, v'shel gafrit, or if it's from sulfur, v'shel gvina, or if it's some kind of dried cheese, v'shel ravav, or if it's some kind of raking stubbles, we would probably think of leaves, things like that. But matnita, Tana, and a Mishnah also, teaches as follows, or a Braita. Tana, af shalkash, also if it's from straw, for example, and also if it refers to givava, some kind of, further chips, bark, things like that, right? Dry twigs, those kinds of things. Ubamatnita tana af shel kash v'shel givava. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Eitzim shel Bavel ein tzrichim rov. That wood that came from Babylonia, does not need to have the majority on fire, right, before Shabbat. Mat kifla Rav Yosef. Ma'ihi. So Rav Yosef challenged him. What are you referring to, right? Ilema silte. If you're talking about wood chips, for example, or slivers of wood, because perhaps they burn more easily. Hashta tila. Here we were talking about wicks. Amar ula hamadlich tzrich sheyadlik berov hayotze. Right? Ula is saying here that when one kindles, he has to kindle the greater part of what protrudes, of what sticks out, right? Again, referring to our example, of burning before the Shabbat, right? Silte, but in regarding to these chips, is this what we're talking about? Bebaye, is it really? That's what we're asking about? El Amar Rav Yosef, but rather Rav Yosef is saying, Shocha da Arza. We're talking about the bark of cedar. Rami bar Abba Amar Zaza. We're really talking about dry twigs, particularly of hyssop. And so that part of the Gemara, of the Perek, concludes with our discussion of primarily both the contents of the Medura, the substance being burned, and leads us also somewhat into the topic of wicks. And therefore, as Hadran Alach Yitziot Shabbat. Now, let's go on to the next parak as we continue. I'll try to move a little bit faster. I know it's longer material, but most of us are familiar with this Mishnah since we recite it as part of Friday night davening. And here we're talking about permitted and forbidden wicks and fuels. And most of the text, as we continue, will focus on language issues. Bameh madlikin, ubameh en madlikin. And with what can we light, and with what are we not permitted to light? Ein madlikin lo belechesh. We're not permitted to light with the bast. Bast is a sort of woody fiber that exists below the bark of the tree, and this is in regards to cedar. Velo bechosen, and not in uncombed flax. Velo bekalach, and not with raw silk. Velo beptilat ha'idan, and not with the fiber, the best of willows. Velo beptilat hamidbar, and not with desert weed. Velo birokasha al pnei hamayim, and not with a kind of greenish moss that grows on water. Velo bezephet, and not with pitch. Velo b'sha'ava, and not with wax. Velo b'shemen kik, and not with castor oil. Velo b'shemen sreifa, and not with burnt oil. Velo ba'alia, and not with wicks that are made from the fat of sheep's tails. Velo b'chelev, and not with fat or tallow. Nachum Hamadai, Hamadi Omer, says Nachum the Medea, Madlikin b'chelev mevushal, that it's permitted to light with cooked, okay, if you will, tallow. The Chachamim Omrim, but the sages say, Echad mevushal, ve'echad she'eno mevushal. The same, whether it's cooked or it's not cooked, ein madlikin bo. We're not permitted to light with it, kindle with it. Okay. Now, our problem now, as we continue with the Gemara, is that the language of the Mishnah, remember, which was Eretz Yisrael, okay, was not necessarily familiar to generations of the Babylonian sages. And so they're primarily often going to ask, what is the translation, the meaning of these terms? Okay? And so that's what we're going to see now. Lechesh is what? Shucha da'arza. It's the bark of the cedar. Shucha da'arza, eitz ba'almahu. Cedar bark is a tree, says the Gemara. Ba'am ranita de'itbe. We're talking about the blast, the fibrous substance, the woolly substance that's underneath the bark. Velo bechosen, and we said, and not with uncombed flax. Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, Neoret shel pishtan. It's the combed chaff of the flax. It's sometimes called tow, T-O-W. Amar le Abai, and Rai Abai said, Vahaktiv. But isn't there a pasuk that cites, okay, Vahaya hachason lenaoret, citing a pasuk from Yeshayahu, okay, about the issue of who will be left after the destruction, right? Okay, what happens? Right, Miklal dechosen lavna oratu. This would seem to imply that chosen is not this nooret. Ela amar Abaye, but rather Abaye, and says, right? Says it's, what is this? Kitna de diek velo nafitz. He said, basically, okay, it is crushed fibers, okay, that have, right, of the chaff of the flax plants that have not been combed. Right? Okay. Velo bechelef, we said. right? And not with what would seem raw silk. Amar Shmuel, says Shmuel, She'iltinu lekol mechute yama. Okay, we asked all of the seafarers, right, the sailors, travel around, va'amrela, kulcha shmei. And they said, we know it today as kulcha, okay, which is basically a kind of unfinished silk, okay, all right, it's almost a little bit similar to wool. Rav Yitzchak bar Zeira Amar Gushkara, right? Rav Yitzchak is saying it's more like coarse silk and not so much like a cotton-like plant. Ravin va'Abaye, a story, Havu Yadve Kame de Rabbana Nehemiah. Abaye and Ravin were sitting and they were learning before one of the other scholars, Rabbana Nehemiah, Achva the Reish Galuta, the brother of the Reish Galuta. Chazye Dahavu Lavish Mitachsa. And they saw that he was wearing a garment that was made from metaxa, okay, which was a kind of raw silk, right? Amar le Ravin la Abaye, and Ravin says to Abaye, Hainu kalach ditnan. This is the kalach. This is the kind of raw silk or coarse silk that we learned about in the Mishnah. Amar le, says Abaye, Anan Shira Parnada Karinam le. Says we call it Shira Parnada, the kind of pounded silk, okay, that is much more refined, okay. Meitive, but we have a challenge here as follows, right? Hashiraim, pounded silk, vahakalach, and another kind of coarse silk, vahasirkin, okay, and another kind of variety of corded silk, if you will. Chayavin b'tzitzit. They all require fringes, right? Tiyuv to the ravin. Okay, so this silk and corded silk and pounded silk, if they require fringes, okay, this seems to be a challenge to Ravin's statement that it's all the same item. Tiyuvta, indeed, says the Gemara, okay, it seems to refute his statement. Ibayat ema, but if you want, I would say, Shira lechud, the Shira Panda'a lechud. That maybe there are two different kinds of silk. One is more raw silk or less refined, and one is another paranda, another kind of smoother silk. Okay. V'lo b'ptilat ha'idan, we said, right? And not with the fibers, the bast from willow. Ach vina, we said, willow bast. Ravin va'Abaye, another story. Havu ka'azlu v'pikta tetamro rita. Ravin and Abaye were traveling in the valley of Tamro Rita. Chazinu lehinu arbata. And they saw, okay, some willows. What happened? Amar le Ravin, says Ravin la Abaye, Hainu idan tetznan. This is the item idan, the willow bast that we were learned about. Amar le, says Abaye, Hahi eitz ba'almahu. Isn't this just a willow tree, right? Just plain wood. Kalaf. Ravin peeled off some of the bark. Va'achvele amranita de bene. And he showed to Abaye the bast, the wool-like substance, the fibers that were between the tree and between the bark itself. Velo b'ptilat hamidbar, and we said not with the desert weed, shavra, that is a specific kind of plant called mulin, right? That sort of tall, woolly kind of weed. Velo biroka sha'al pnei hamayim, and not with a kind of green moss that's floating on the water. Maihi, what is that? They ask. I lema ochmata, if we say it's a kind of black moss, a kind of moss that grows on standing water, de charitzi, it's brittle. I porche mifrach, and it's brittle and it's going to break. Okay, so how can you use that as a wick? Ela amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, uchmata the arba. We're talking about the kind of moss that's found on ships, Tana. That's what we're talking about. Osifu alei, okay? Now, the Braita adds, Osifu aleihem, the rabbis added to this list, shel tsemer, wicks made from wool, the shel se'ar, or wicks made from hair. Right? V'tana didan, and our Tana then came and explained, Sama tsemer, the wool wicks, mechavetz kavitz, because those wicks tend to shrink. Se'ar, use of wicks from hair, ichruche michrach, they tend to scorch or smolder. Velo bezefet, says our Mishnah, and not by pitch. Zefet zifta, clasp pitch. Sh'ava, right, wax. Kiruta, that's wax. Tana, and we teach also another statement. Adkan pasul ptilot. Up to this point, our Mishnah really taught about the prohibited wicks. Mikan ve'elech psul shmanim. Afterwards, we're then going to deal with that fuels that are prohibited. Right? Pshita, that's obvious. No, says the Gemara. Shava itztarichale. It was necessary to make reference to wax. Mahu detema. What did he want to tell us? Right? L'ptilot nami. That for wicks as well. Lo chazia. It's not suitable. Kal mishma lan. And that's what he comes to teach us. And we're going to stop right there for today. Okay? Just a reminder that again, this is tomorrow's daf. I want to thank you for participating, and I'm going to unmute if anybody has questions.
Thank you.
Anyone with any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Ted, thank you for joining in. Rebecca, welcome. I'm going to unmute you.
All right. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, good. Thank you for participating. Okay.
Okay, have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good day.
Have a good evening.
Okay, Harvey, you all right there, right?
I'm here.
Okay.
I heard
Great.
everything.
Okay.
I'm
All
still-
right, everybody. Thank you. Have a
Good
good
night.
evening.
Thank you.
So long.
Good night.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, sweetheart. It's time to go.
Don't overdo it.